At some point, you just have to drop. Yet again, making a video of observations from my creative career. I actually just put out a video that basically contradicts this statement. It's called Make Music for Your Audience in 100 Years, where I talked about the importance of carefully handling, as an artist, your own body of work, and to seek like a self-awareness and a calculation early on. I talked about social media's role in recent artistry and the promotion of that artistry. It is so easy to drop these days. And like, if you're not careful, this can result in people dropping things that they shouldn't, which worst case scenario can like deeply hinder you long-term from having the career that you want. Also, disclaimer, huge difference between making music and dropping and promoting said music. What I'm talking about here is dropping and promoting. Like actually putting yourself out there and saying, hey, check me out. Listen to me. There is nothing ever wrong or unwise about making music. You should make whatever the hell you want all the time. That is how you'll get better. And really, that's the work that needs to get done to get where you want to be. But the situation changes when you commit to putting something out there. Because at that point, it's not really yours anymore. It becomes the world's to discuss and to judge. And there are external repercussions that wouldn't be there if you hadn't committed to dropping it and showing the world it. Okay, back to it. My general offer of advice in that video is be careful, don't drop too early. Like, think deeply about your own vision and the reputation that you want to accumulate over time. Of course, this will evolve, like you're not gonna have this figured out on day one, but like, hold your own body of work to like a reasonably high standard, because someday when you die, the work is what will remain. And trends are deceptive because they will change, and short-term attention on the internet at the expense of your ideal long-term legacy is not worth it. I stand by those statements, and check out that other video. I go in depth on that. But in this video, I want to talk about the other side of the coin. The people with talent who perhaps don't drop as much as they should. This is a completely different category from the people who, potentially embarrass themselves by dropping anything and everything. Assuming that you have some skill and intention in your work, it is a very normal and healthy thing for a sensitive artist with taste to be critical of their own work and to have some skepticism about what they want their name to be attached to. But you can take this too far, to such an extent that you are actually sabotaging your own interests by not dropping. I'll try to put this as simply as possible. And again, this is just my perspective. Assuming that you have potential, realized or unrealized, as I see it, over the course of your entire artistic life, there are two big phases as it relates to the value of dropping. In the earlier phase, it is more in your interests to not release anything and to not seek widespread attention. But there will come a second phase, which hopefully is way longer, where the average quality of your work makes it far more worth it for you to drop something rather than nothing. The first phase is when you're getting your shit together. You're discovering your craft, your process, your artistic self. Again, if you're in this phase, I'm not saying don't make shit because you're not ready. I'm not saying don't make music. You should always be making music, but it's about presenting to the world. And, not every song has to be super serious. But if you want to be taken seriously by the world at large, then I believe that there's like a certain threshold of quality that you need time and perspective to see with clarity. This is why I say don't drop your first song. Like, make a bunch of songs first, no? Nothing in art is objective, and we all have very different things going on. But in your first 3 years making music, your work from year 3 will be noticeably better than your work from year 1. Eventually, I think you come to the second phase, where regardless of your own personal opinions about your work, you've actually made enough progress that even a small fraction of your work is actually worth dropping. Because there's potential for building an audience from that work, even if the vision is not totally realized yet. And yes, I understand some artists don't want to build an audience, they don't want to promote, whatever, I get it. I'm talking in general. My wisdom on this is of course limited. I'm a young man, but I will give a personal take on this that comes from my actual lived experience. I have been creative musically for years, but only in the last year have I gotten to a point where I'm actually dropping music for real. Music that I'm proud of and willingly attaching to a name that I intend to build for decades. My body of work is in progress for real now. Before I went solo, I was in a band for 8 years or so. Those years were where I learned essentially everything that I know today about making music. I started from literally zero. When I was in high school, I bought my first guitar for $100 and started writing songs. When you first start out, I think you're necessarily naive. It's just fun, and it's just about making the music. I think as artists, like, we need this stage where we're not especially critical, and it's not about the quality. It's about falling in love with the process of making your art. That is definitely where we were as a band when we started. Eventually, though, you grow, you get better, you start to take it more seriously, and the bar that you set for yourself gets higher and higher. In my band, we eventually made music that we thought was releasable, and we put out 2 albums, one when I was 18 and one when I was 20. At the time, we were proud of these albums, because compared to where we were before, they were a huge level up in our songwriting, in our ambition, in just the work involved for the albums to even exist. Now, this isn't to say that we gained much from those albums, aside from experience. Nobody really heard them besides our closest friends. But we never stopped making and writing music, and this continued for years. With hindsight, I can honestly say that this was that first phase. A lot of my songs from that period, like, even if I wanted to put them out back then, it really wouldn't have been worth it, and I don't think I would be proud of them now. Eventually, the band moved to a new city together. We rebranded ourselves under a new name, and we were ready to start over and do the band for real. Then what happened was we attempted to record proper studio versions of songs from the enormous archive that we had accumulated over years. But we put so much pressure on ourselves about what should be the first contribution to this new band with this new identity that we never finished anything. Even though we sincerely tried, and what we actually did make was pretty good. The issues we couldn't solve were like mixing quality, the order of release, and generally the identity of the band and how we would gradually build it. There's one night I remember where we had some friends over at the apartment, and we played some recordings in progress that, of course, we never ended up putting out because we didn't think they were good enough. And one of our friends looked at us and earnestly said, "Why aren't these out? What are you waiting for? Like, I want to listen to this on Spotify right now, but I can't." And of course, like, he might have been gassing us up or whatever, but like, I don't think that he was. We didn't admit it to ourselves, but by then, we had gotten to that second phase. A point where our work was releasable and consumable. And there was sincere audience building potential in there. It wasn't perfect, but like, how could it be? And we were in this feedback loop where we made no progress in audience building because we had no music out, and our lack of perceived progress made us overthink what we should release, so we never finished anything, and the cycle continued. With hindsight, what we should have done is allowed ourselves a jumping off point. Nobody was expecting us to produce immaculate masterpieces right out of the gate, and besides, we had no audience anyway. But putting things out is actually a commitment to getting better. And imperfect recordings would have actually helped us build an audience that saw potential in what we were doing. There was more potential value in dropping than not dropping. That's basically what I wanted to get across with this video. At a certain point, just commit. Because like, you can't wait forever. And if you really care about your work, then there are likely people out there who are going to connect with it. If you never drop, you'll never receive that positive energy. You might be better than you think you are. You might be further along than you think you are. Don't delude yourself from these words, I guess, but you're never gonna be perfect. So at a certain point, you just have to drop.